Outgoing Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell torched Tucker Carlson in his press briefing on Capitol Hill Tuesday, blaming Tucker for keeping any movement on a foreign aid package from happening faster. Let's listen.
I think the demonization of Ukraine began by Tucker Carlson, who, in my opinion, ended up where he should have been all along, which is interviewing Vladimir Putin. And so he had an enormous audience, which convinced a lot of rank-and-file Republicans that maybe this was a mistake.
The former Fox News host was castigated for sitting down with Russian President Vladimir Putin to begin with. And even Putin himself was impressed with the sit-down, saying afterward, quote, "To be honest, I thought that he would behave aggressively and ask so-called sharp questions. I was not prepared for this. I wanted it because it would give me the opportunity to respond in the same way." Sarcasm there at the idea that Putin was impressed with Tucker Carlson's approach in that interview. But, you know, it's an interesting sort of admission. There's two sides to what McConnell is saying here. I think there is some truth to the fact that Tucker Carlson largely moved the Overton window and allowed the Republican base to be critical openly and make demands politically of their leadership, of, you know, to change course and align with them when it comes to some of this foreign spending. But that is an indictment of the Republican establishment, not Tucker Carlson, who was better able to read the tea leaves and assess what the mood of the country was.
Right.
To the extent that people didn't speak out, the public didn't have a resource, a vessel in which to put their discontent with establishment Republican war hawkery, it was because there was nowhere for them to turn within elected officials, Republicans in the Republican caucus. Now, Tucker Carlson...
Or in the media.
Or in the media. Tucker Carlson simply provided a platform for sentiments that already were pre-existing to voice themselves.
And he was able to do that because he had the most watched show on cable news for basically the entirety of his time at Fox. He was not some remnant or some small flickering light in the dark. He was the biggest shark in the pond because he had viewers who agreed with him on these things. You know, maybe he moved them toward that direction more so, but this is what the Republican Party finds time and time again, that its base, its viewers of conservative media, its primary voters are much less interventionist, very skeptical of funding of foreign wars, much more so than the elites of the party, than the other media voices in the party. They found this in the wakes of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. They found this as Ron Paul burst onto the scene in 2008 and immediately became the most popular conservative political figure among young people, among veterans, on college campuses, and the media treated him, even conservative media, treated him like this utter black sheep. They were laughing at him, and that continued until they really did find out that actually he was drawing a lot of support, because that sentiment is much more popular in the party and among its base. Tucker knew that. He actually learned that from Ron Paul. He's been open about, I mean, he interviewed Ron Paul recently and has said, you know, you were right all along about a lot of these foreign policy topics, and he was able to do that on his own show. So while Mitch McConnell is like technically right that you wouldn't have known, or conservative media, Republican elites would have been able to pretend there wasn't opposition to what they were doing in Ukraine if not for Tucker. That part of it is accurate, but it's not because he willed into an existence a Ukraine skeptical coalition of conservatives.
Right.
That part of the base exists.
And we'll talk about this more later when we interview Michael Schnell about the specifics, the details of this foreign aid package and the TikTok ban along with it, the vote breakdowns and the like. But something that's really important to note is that even though there has been this new movement that Tucker Carlson broke open, and which has been very closely aligned with Donald Trump and the MAGA movement more generally speaking, there do seem to be some cracks emerging because of the way that Donald Trump is leaning in an establishment direction as he's trying to win the presidency. in a way that is trying to thread the needle between establishment Republicans not wanting Mike Johnson to be ousted the way that Kevin McCarthy was, not wanting to have Republicans disarray being the headline going into the election. And as a consequence, bear hugging Mike Johnson as he pushes forward a deeply unpopular with the base bill. And the way Republicans seem to be dealing with that is to staunchly criticize Mike Johnson without saying a mumbling word about Donald Trump's complicity, even as Mike Johnson says, Donald Trump is with me, even as Donald Trump said in his remarks after the courtroom yesterday, Mike Johnson's a good guy, he's doing the best that he can. You know, there does seem to be a desire to keep these two people and these two ideologies separate, or else, because if they were together, you'd have to deal with the fact that maybe the anti-establishment rhetoric, really is just that. It's just rhetoric. And when push comes to shove, when someone's in power, when Donald Trump is actually in office or close to being back in office again, there is one true fact in the American political ecosystem, which is that there's a uniparty when it comes to war and foreign spending.
Right, and that Trump is not ideological himself at all, and he's capable of listening to the last person he talked to, the person who sounded good on TV. That was why he hired John Bolton to run his foreign policy, someone who was totally the opposite of what he had articulated on so many other situations. He hired him to run his foreign policy because he liked how combative he was on TV.
So what does that mean for Trump voters?
Right. It means that, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not saying that Trump is going to deliver on these things they want from him in terms of the non-interventionist foreign policy or populism or anything else. He might. He very well might totally not do that because he listens to the wrong people or he changes his mind. He doesn't have carefully thought through ideological commitments on these fronts. And he does have a lot of his simps in the right-wing media who are going to spin and defend regardless of what he says and does, and say it's part of the three-dimensional chess to beat the uniparty. So I don't disagree with that, but he is very well liked among a lot of Republicans, and he gets a lot of leeway among his voters.
Well,
maybe not enough to get him elected again, but they give him the benefit of the doubt. He has convinced them that he is on their side and he is outside the establishment, even though he was president.
Yeah, he does. And what role does the media play in that, including people like Tucker Carlson, who I think should be commended from being willing to break from the hegemonic Republican views of X, Y, and Z, but so far has been unwilling to out and out be critical of Donald Trump as he quite so obviously betrays the promises that he made when he was president, or call him out for failing to follow through on the promises he made before he won the presidency last time around. This is a man who is now posturing as someone who's against the TikTok ban, who innovated the TikTok ban in the first instance, who now inveighs against the deep state and intelligence apparatus, who did absolutely nothing to dismantle it when he was in office. What do voters who have sincere commitments to these policies, some of which I agree with, where are they supposed to actually go? How are they supposed to trust someone who, as you put it, will listen to the last person who was in the room with them? Are people's fates, their security, their job security, their ability to secure health care supposed to hinge on a man who says, yes, I'm going to protect Social Security and Medicaid one instance, and then when in office made an effort to cut those programs, who will say I oppose foreign spending while you're running for office, and then when you're in office, do absolutely nothing.
Well, you have the choice of someone who might oppose foreign spending but probably won't, and someone who definitely won't.
No, but they won't. There's no might. There's no might with Donald Trump. That's the thing. Both Donald Trump and Joe Biden have been president. We've seen how they've been president, and neither of them have shown any commitment or evinced any credibility in any of those issues, which is why I think there's so much more of an appetite for someone like an RFK Jr. Now, I have serious questions about his commitments as well, but at very least with RFK Jr., the rhetoric has not been proven as empty by an actual 4 years spent in office, the way that it is true of both Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And the thing is that unlike Joe Biden, who is being roundly criticized by leftists like myself, Donald Trump is still getting the benefit of the doubt from media institutions, including Tucker Carlson, who are frankly, I think, leading his good faith voters who are genuinely invested in these policies astray and right into the lion's den of yet another establishment president who's going to betray them in their
Well, we just did a whole primary cycle for the Republicans where there was
none of them were any good either.
I mean, they all got trounced. I mean,
but he wouldn't debate any of them. This is our democracy. Yeah. This is the state of our
democracy. Just like Biden.
Just like Biden. This is the state of our democracy.
Yeah, it's a shame. More rising right after this.